Decade.
Favorite decade of music?
Favorite decade, being a 70s child, I'm going to have to go with the 80s. Because it was interesting to see all those 70s bands try to adapt to the sound of the 80s, bringing in synthesizers and keyboards and electronic drums.
Yeah. Without a doubt, 70s. Born in the 60s, early 60s. You know, Led Zeppelin 2, I mentioned it before. First album I ever bought, I was 8 years old.
Jason.
And like Ronnie, the 80s. Because for me, there were so many things that were born in the 80s. There were incredible bands that came out of the UK in the 80s. There was amazing stuff that happened at the end of the 80s that set up another great decade, the 90s. But the 80s for me had everything.
I'm going to go with the 80s as well. I mean, I was in high school in the 80s. CHOM was on the radio. I remember in high school going out on the lunch hour and listening to the electric lunch hour, and, you know, whoever had their car at school that day, and we'd listen to electric lunch hours.
For me, it's still the 60s. And the reason why is because everything was new. There were no rules. It was incredibly naive. And the record companies hadn't taken over yet. They didn't start to dictate the terms. And so people were being incredibly experimental.
Picard?
Whatever the next decade is. I think this time is similar to what you're talking about with the 60s. You want to talk about no format. I mean, the YouTube generation has no format. They will like this because they like it, and they like this because they like it. And those two things probably are so dissimilar, it's remarkable to most people. I'm very happy right now, and I would never want to go back. I think it's fine because not only do you get everything that has already been put out, but you get everything that's coming out today.
That's a good attitude,
and that to me is CHOM 2013.
I'm going to go with the 80s too, more specifically big hair. Like
you are representing.
And the Motley Crue.
Hair metal.
And, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Bilal?
For me, it is the Motown era. Hands down. There's something about that soul music. Yeah, well, it's 60s. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go with the 70s, just basically because it was, I'd say, my first introduction to rock music. Most of the rock music that I actually grew up with came from the 70s because of one of my cousins, and that's what she used to listen to, and she kind of passed on to me.
Yeah. And Sharon?
Sorry, I was just drinking. But if I'm picking a decade for music, I'm not
and you are.
Whatever. Stickler. I'm going to pick 75 to 85.
What?
My thing is more of a, it's 80s.
This is
because it's where I came to be. It's where I remember going to Discus in Fairview and buying my first record.
Yeah.
Okay.
Discus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Where the people that worked at Discus were like rock stars.
Are you kidding me? For sure.
For me, it was the 70s. We'll be right back.
The spirit of rock. 97.7.